Morning all. There was a very dramatic game played just yesterday. I'm actually doing this quick annotation overview, well, relatively quick and relatively focused annotation overview on this amazingly critical position where most people following the game live between Nakamura and Carlsen thought that Carlsen had it. I was one of them, and I think it shows how cruel actually chess can be, and maybe emphasize the importance of the recent Backfire series on this channel, which featured a lot of Capablanca backfires. I think Capablanca is of the same stylistic lineage almost of Magnus Carlsen, but I think Magnus Carlsen also has features of some other players, like Lasker. Lasker was known to give his opponents often positions that they really enjoy and maybe overindulged in, and didn't really touch on the psychological impact of that in the Evolution of Styles series. I mean, if you're given your favourite type of position and manage to lose it, I think you're not just losing it, it's kind of wounding one's ego, one's style, I think, for future encounters. So maybe Lasker was a kind of terrible player for people to lose against if he indulged you in what you thought were fantastic positions that you really enjoyed. And here, earlier today, Nakamura's got what seems to be an absolutely fantastic attacking position. There doesn't seem to be much danger with White's king. The rook had been involved, I thought, quite fantastically in attack and defence of that b2 square. The knight's on a fantastic scroll at f5. Black's pieces are all virtually tied down. It's like virtually pinned down, and when a lot of pieces are pinned down, it's like an almost virtual Zugzwang. The rook is just tied down to stop knight e7 check, forking the king and queen. The queen is tied down to h7. Okay, there's this knight on c4, but in this position I think many grandmasters would have chosen what was played in this position, to be quite honest, because what was played in this position seems absolutely logical. The king cannot move because of this pawn on g7. What was played just seems so incredibly tempting, and I think really in terms of the Backfire series, this is like the most cutting sort of backfire, a seemingly winning move from a seemingly winning position. I thought Black was on his last legs, Magnus Carlsen. I know he's a resourceful player, but what happens is quite remarkable, that the move d6, which I'm pretty sure most grandmasters would choose, let alone strong club players and players before that, lower than that, because it simply threatens knight e7 check. If the knight takes here, then knight takes, queen takes, for example. Queen takes h7, this mate, the queen has to stand guard of h7, so it's just like, it seems to be winning a piece. The remarkable magic though happened though, that Black, what else apart from knight takes d6 is actually possible here? There's not much else which seems reasonable. If Black tries h5, then queen takes h5, and we're kind of mating Black, even if the queens get exchanged off, with rook h8, f6, g6 is mate next move. So Black is actually down to what appears to be an only move in this position, actually, to play knight takes d6. And just from a logical point of view, if you think that's the opponent's only move, you wouldn't think it's necessarily the start of a remarkable, like, Houdini act escape. But something strange just about this configuration of pieces here. I mean, really, really strange. This is one of the strangest positions I've seen for a long time. That actually, after knight takes d6, you wouldn't think that white's king safety can be called into question, is on trial. How is white's king safety on trial here? Okay, the rook isn't defending the back row, it was defending b2, and this queen, you know, has been stuck on g6, seemingly with just the innocent objective of defending h7. The thing is, black in this position now plays a remarkably powerful move, rook d8, and it just seems to be a whole series of coincidences here that the next tempting move for white is quite bad. That was actually played. It turned out to be quite bad, and I'll try and do a detailed annotation of the whole game at some point, but I'm just actually in complete shell shock with this position, because the knight coming to f5, for example, seems incredibly powerful here to threaten knight e7, forking king and queen, and just being a piece up. It's just strange that, you know, it just happens that the rook is not on the first rank, and it just happens that this knight is now blocking the queen from e6, and the queen just happens to have access to b6, and there's these two ingredients put together that actually rook d1 check here. There's no escape for the white king. It's a ridiculous scenario that here black is actually turning the tables totally with a mate in 4. The best move for white is king a2. Then check is actually like mating, for example, like this. Queen b6 check, king c2, queen b1, and it's the white king that gets it, that gets checkmated. And the remarkable thing as well is that king b2 is no better, because now queen b6 check, king c2, and then the same sort of thing. So it seems just a whole load of coincidences that knight f5 and the rook on h2 lead to knight f5 not actually being possible. And in this position, to maintain any sort of advantage, actually the b6 square needs to be cut off from the queen with knight c8 to maintain any sort of advantage. After king takes g7, you know, it's not so clear. This kind of continuation is not so clear now, even though white's a knight up. But this was the way to go, because, you know, black's got loads of pawns here. It's not going to be like that easy. The knight actually has to go back to go to c8 here, and it's not going to be that easy. So I think it's a remarkably strange position that after like what seems to be an only move in rook d8 now, that the knight hasn't got knight f5. I think maybe Nakamura was in shell shock already, and he didn't find knight c8. He was very short on time here, so he plays knight c4, and after queen takes e4, Magnus Carlsen was well and truly back in the game in this position. And I don't want to show you the rest of the game until tomorrow. I just want to go over some other aspects of this position for this moment. That in this position, I don't know if you remember a recent Blitz game, I thought the opponent's pieces were kind of pinned. Well, they were actually pinned in the sense of being pinned to another piece. But here it's as though, you know, black's pieces are kind of pinned down virtually, even though they're not actually pinned. They're kind of tied down. And maybe, you know, we can look at this now and say this is almost a virtual Zugzwang, because if the knight happens to be on a5 or anywhere else, then d6 is supporting knight e7 without this knight d6 and this horrible rook crashing down. So it just needs actually for this knight to move, or even this pawn to move. It is almost like a virtual Zugzwang position. If this knight had moved or the pawn had moved, then the rook is tied down, the queen is tied down, it is virtual Zugzwang position, and d6 happens to be at depth 18 actually the 15th strongest move for white in this position. And you know, these are quite I'm gonna, you know, these are quite amusing ideas, but the most incisive, I mean, here's a winning line. Just Queen G4 shows the Zugzwang nature of the position. If Queen B6, Queen H3, I know this looks ridiculous, Queen G6, and even a move like Queen H4, just give black the move, shows it's a Zugzwang. The rook can't move, the queen can't move. As soon as the knight moves now to say A5, then D6 is absolutely crushing. We're talking +9. What does black do about knight E7? He plays knight C6. Okay, maybe there's still a bit of work to do here. Queen G4 now makes way, you know, for rook H6. And here, you know, knight E7, we're talking a mate in 10 now after this move, forcing this. And you know, I don't think it's a forced mate in 8, and that just shows even with ridiculous triangulating queen, white can win this position. It shows actually black is actually in a virtual Zugzwang here, that in this position even that queen triangulation is winning. But it turns out that one of the neatest moves, I think, from a human perspective, would appear to be Queen F1, trying to encourage the knight to go away from D6. And if knight D6, then there's knight takes D6 here, Queen takes D6, Rook H6, attacking the Queen, and if the Queen like moves somewhere, Queen H1. How is black actually defending H7 here? You know, Queen G4, Rook takes H7, crashing through. This should have been. It seems utterly convincing that this was a winning position, and there's also a neat idea as well. I think of even. I think Rook takes knight D6 is actually defending F7, but if B5, here is a very, very neat idea. First of all, the Zugzwang can be emphasized. I think King A2, let alone a completely crushing move that I want to show you. Then if knight D6, we just play Rook H6, so it's kind of Zugzwang there. So if knight B6, then Queen takes B5, and the Queen is attacking the Rook, which can't move because of knight E7. So there's a kind of Zugzwang here. This is absolutely diabolical. So Queen F1 also emphasizes Zugzwang possibilities, and there's even a tactical solution in this position with Rook takes H7, which is amazing. So if the King takes, then Queen H1 check, mating. You know, unless the Queen's going to go in front, mating on H8. And if the Queen takes here, then we have knight H6 check, and F7 is decisive. The Queen will have to give herself up. Otherwise, King takes G7, Queen takes F7, and then like mating. So I just think this is a really ridiculously resourceful position, where black was forced to be kind of resourceful because of this D6 move. I can only say there are two fundamental strategies that I've acquired in my tool set for chess, which are useful in some games and sometimes useful in others. One strategy is, let's go back to this critical position. It's just incredible. One strategy in chess is to kind of maintain the tension. There's this expression, maintaining the tension. And it seems that attention maintaining moves can sometimes maybe emphasize the Zugzwang, because it kind of maintains attention, doesn't it? If you consider Queen F1, that everything is kind of left in place, whilst D6 kind of reflects another idea of exploitable weaknesses, or what seems to be an exploitable weakness, and it's more committal, and sometimes you might be opening yourself up. The Zugzwang here is actually kind of remarkable, though, because even, you know, King A2, if the knight, it shows its Zugzwang. If the rook moves knight E7, if the queen moves queen H7, if the knight moves to D6, then we just take it. And if queen takes queen H7, so what does even, you know, King A2 maintains the tension. If B5, then this whole B file stuff with queen B6 is kind of prevented by black's own pawn. It actually, in effect, has improved king's safety ever so slightly. And in this position, D6 is a lot more powerful as one alternative. But there's also even more crushing is queen G4. I think the idea is rook H6. So what does black actually do here? If the queen moves, say here, rook takes H7. Is it like a mate in 3 here? Because we've got rook H8. Black's got no time for any checks. The B pawn has actually helped protect the white king. So sometimes this strategy of doing, sort of maintaining the tension, is actually incredibly more powerful than trying to exploit or use exploitable weaknesses, or even thinking about exploitable weaknesses. It seems the notion of exploitable weaknesses can sometimes damage your own king safety. You can create activity for your opponent's pieces. The notion of maintaining tension with queen, you know, a move like queen F1 in this position, or king A2. I mean, there's a lot of moves that just maintain tension and emphasize the Zugzwang. It just shows how absolutely cruel the game of chess is, and my heart actually goes out sincerely to Nakamura and anyone else in apparently winning positions with apparent winning moves. Well, how it goes out, chess is just such a cruel game that, you know, this is the basic form of a backfire, the most lucrative. You have a seemingly winning position and a seemingly winning move, and it just totally backfires. D6, it's incredible. But very simple moves from black. Knight takes D6, just, okay, sacking a knight. It's virtually forced. Unless white plays knight, you know, C8, the advantage is all gone after the game continuation. It's actually dead equal now with black, you know, giving white some problems, and I'll show you the rest of the game tomorrow. I'm just stunned by this whole incident today. I've not seen anything like it for a considerable time. So I thought I'd go over this particular position. I just find it absolutely staggering. Comments or questions on YouTube? Thanks very much.